Happy Saturday. Happy Black History Month. We have a wonderful read this month, and I cannot wait to talk to the author. So come on in. Hey, Kay. I'm so excited for this book chat. I say that every time, but I'm super excited about this one. Hello. How are you guys doing on this lovely second? People are calling me and I'm trying to do an event. Like, seriously, let me turn my... Hey! Let me let Denene in. We're going to start. Hold on one second. Let me tell people not to call me because I'm doing an event. Okay, I'm back. All right, let's get started. Sorry about that technology. I'm telling you. Let me see if I can get Denene in here. Denene, you need to request to join, or maybe I can get you in here in a second. Works. Okay, this is going to be a spoiler-free conversation. Hi!
Hey, what's happening?
Nothing much. How are you?
I'm great. I am in Maryland right now. I was here for a funeral. My auntie passed away.
What
Yeah, she's
part of
good.
Maryland? Because I'm in Maryland.
Oh, okay. I'm in Dunkirk.
Okay, I'm in Fort Washington, so near the MGM Casino.
We were just at the MGM Casino 2 nights ago.
Literally.
We had a ball.
That is, oh my goodness.
But you know how funerals tend to be. They turn into, mini family reunions. So it's my dad is here, my uncle's here, my brother is here.
Oh,
I'm at my cousin's house. All my favorite cousins are here. And so it's just been a really lovely last couple of days.
yeah.
Bittersweet because I really love my auntie, but um, you know, being able to see family and hug my dad's neck
Yes.
and bond with everybody. I've had champagne this morning already because that's the way the Milners do.
Okay, listen.
So it's so it's been a lovely time. Yeah.
Oh, you so could have canceled today. I
Oh,
feel
there's no way
bad.
I was canceling. What? Are you crazy? No, I'm here.
Oh my, well, thank you so much for being here, given the circumstance. I'm sorry to hear about your aunt. So I really appreciate you being here. I'm so excited to talk with you because I think I remember coming in your DMs talking about the audiobook.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to do a brief introduction and I want you to tell people about you and all the great things that you've done before coming to, I kept this. I love this. Oh my goodness.
That original cover,
The
yes, was
original.
really beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah.
So hello, everyone. We are happy Black History Month. Welcome to our February Spine of the Month book chat. I'm Jamise Harper, the founder of Diverse Spines, and I am thrilled, and I say thrilled, to be here with New York Times bestselling author Denene Millner, the author of One Blood. This book is absolutely incredible.
Thank you.
I mean,
Thank
incredible. And I
you.
say that because I love historical fiction. And I'm generally pretty hard on it because I'm just kind of like, how's everything going to blend together? Am I going to feel like I'm in the time period? But this is an epic journey. The storytelling is exquisite.
Thank
Um, it's like literally, it was one of my top faves last year. I had 10 favorites. It was made the list. But this
you.
is your 32nd book. Is that correct?
It is. It's my 32nd book. I had two books come out last year. It was One Blood, and then maybe a month later, I had a Spider-Man book come out, and children's book.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
awesome. So I want to hear a little bit about your story because I know that you've been writing for others.
Hmm.
You're in journalism.
Hmm.
Like you're the boss. Like, and I don't think people really know. And I had to do a little digging to find out things myself as well.
Yeah.
And your career has been absolutely amazing.
Thank you. I started out as a journalist. Like that's my background. I started working literally the day after I graduated from Hofstra University out in Long Island, New York, which is where I'm from.
Okay.
And I worked first for the Associated Press, and then I became a political reporter for the New York Daily News. And I reported there on Giuliani and David Dinkins, who was then the first Black mayor
Mhm.
of New York, and George Pataki, who was, and Mario Cuomo, the daddy.
Yes.
I covered all of them as a political reporter, and then became an entertainment reporter and covered, anything that had to do with Black people. That's what I focused on. And I did that because I come from a generation where it was still hard to see Black people in a
Hmm.
newspaper or in a magazine or on television. It was still very much an event, right? And which is crazy to say because I'm 55. I'm of age, but I don't consider myself to be old. I don't consider us to be old.
Hmm.
And when we were coming of age was like in the 70s and 80s. It was still hard to see Black folks, and so
Yes.
I just decided to dedicate my life as a journalist to covering us, and that's carried over in everything that I've done, from being a political reporter and concerning myself with how government was treating communities of color. That counted when I became an editor and I was, working for Honey Magazine and then Parenting Magazine.
Hmm.
I wanted us to understand that, like our entertainment was important to us, our entertainers are important to us, the way that we practice our culture and our cultural capital is important to us worldwide, not just, like in our basements.
Hmm.
When I worked at Parenting, I wanted us to understand that Black parents have babies and love them with
Yes.
intention, and we do things our own way, and that doesn't make them wrong or right. It's just our way. And I wanted us to be seen as loving, intentional parents. When I started my blog, My Brown Baby, and then started writing books somewhere along the way, when I got into the business, and I made clear that I wanted to dedicate every word to shining a light on us, I was told over and over again, mostly like by old white men, that I would be ruining my career if I just focused on Black people because nobody would want to, read about us, or, the way that I covered Black people would be insignificant to audiences. And I thought that was crazy because when I was working at the Daily News, it was then the sixth largest newspaper in the country, and a good 75 to 80% of the audience was people of color. And so, how am I not relevant or covering relevant topics
Hmm.
if I'm covering topics for 80% of your audience? Of
Yes.
course, it's going to be appreciated and celebrated. And so, I never let what other people thought about me covering Black people affect me. And look at me now,
I mean,
like, celebrating us has done me
it,
justice, right? I
it
have an
has.
imprint. I have an imprint at Simon and Schuster that is specifically focused on stories about everyday stories about Black families and children. That imprint focuses solely on Black authors and illustrators.
Oh,
And so I'm not saying that other people cannot tell Black people's stories, but I truly believe that nobody can tell a story about Black children and families like Black children and
absolutely.
families.
I wholeheartedly agree. I
Right. and
wholeheartedly
so
agree. Hmm.
and so that and no one can capture us like Black folks. And so and I wanted to create a space where I was opening doors for Black authors and illustrators who didn't necessarily have the entree into the business. It's gotten much better since I started that imprint in 2017, but there's
Hmm.
still a long way to go. And so I like to think that, opening the door made other people look and say, all right, there are some great authors and illustrators out there that we should also entertain. And that has, that's come to fruition with all these beautiful books
Yeah.
hitting the market. And so that's what I do. I just love the written word. I love telling stories. I've always been nosy. That's always translated into me being a hell of a journalist. And One Blood was a culmination of that. Like before I did One Blood, again, I did 31
Yeah.
books. A lot of them were with other people.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote for Steve Harvey. I wrote Act Like a Lady, Think Like a Man with Steve Harvey, and Straight Talk No Chaser, his first two big
Mm-hmm.
books I wrote for him. I wrote Taraji P. Henson's memoir, Charlie Wilson, Jesse Norman, the opera singer. I wrote a few books with my girlfriends Angela Burt Murray and Mitzi Miller, a series for teens called the Hotlanta series. And I also wrote a book called The Vow, which got turned into a movie on
Yes.
Lifetime called With This Ring.
I mean, listen to this
Yeah,
catalog. I like listen
yeah,
to it.
and a bunch of children's books, and it's just it's been a fun ride. But One Blood was a book that was just on my heart. I dedicated it to my two
Mm-hmm.
moms, my birth mother, my mother of origin, and the woman who raised me, who was my mother. She adopted me. She and my father adopted me, and I consider her my mother.
Yes.
But I also had a mother of origin who carried me and brought me into this world. And so, the book is about, I wanted to just sort of celebrate my mother and her friends, all of my play
Yes.
aunties who, led extraordinary but ordinary lives, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and I felt like in like the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, we didn't really pay attention to those women.
Mm-hmm.
They walked, they went to church on Sunday. They went to work Monday through Friday. Saturday, they may have rested or they may have, caught up on all the things that they
Mm-hmm.
had to catch up on for family. And they were quiet and nobody paid attention to them in the way that we, the people who love them, paid attention to them. They weren't paid attention to culturally
Right.
in movies or television or anything like that. And so, but they were a fount of information for me. They taught me how to be.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to explore, like what it was that, they loved, what it was that motivated them, what it was that hurt them, how they overcame that hurt or didn't,
Mm-hmm.
and how that impacted the people that they were charged with. And so, One Blood is a celebration of Betty Milner. I'm gonna call her name
Mm-hmm.
because that's my mama.
Yes.
Ooh, and I
Oh,
feel her in the room right now. Oh wow. Ooh, wow. Okay. Wow, sometimes it happens
okay.
like
Take
that.
your time.
When I call her name, I feel her.
Mm.
Wow, okay. My mama,
Mm-hmm.
this is a celebration of her. Yeah,
Yeah.
Beth Milner,
Woo.
whose whose middle name is
Oh,
Dolores, and that is
okay. One of the
the
yeah.
name of one of the characters in the book. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whew.
Oh, this is special. Oh, goodness. Well, so I do want to know, like, you wrote for so many other people, right? And
Mhm.
so what was different and how does it feel like that you've done this for like yourself?
Yeah. Um, it's something to have to take other people's thoughts and ideas and their voice and to package it all up and figure out how to tell that
Mhm.
story for them without putting yourself into it, without, I mean, I put my ideas into it, right? Because that's part of the job, right? I'm not a stenographer, right?
Mhm.
I don't like sit and, hear somebody's ideas and then have it transcribed and then just put it on a page. Being a person who writes for other people, a writer for authors, requires you to know the subject backwards and forwards, um, to be able to walk in and ask the right questions to get the answers that will fill out the story, and then to write the story in a way that brings your intelligence, knowledge, know how to to round out and fill out the story, but to do it in a way that it feels like it's coming directly from the person whose name is on the
Mm-hmm.
cover, right? And to help them sort of manage the emotions and the feelings behind it. For instance, when I wrote Jesse Norman's book, Jesse Norman is an opera singer. She passed away maybe like 3 years ago. But she's an enormous talent who's known worldwide. I knew nothing about opera when I secured that book deal. Nothing. I'd listened to opera music, one specific album that I used to play for my babies when they were babies, and that was Kathleen Battle's So Many Stars. And it was like opera singing, but it was like Black spirituals sung in opera form in the opera genre. That was the extent of my dealings with opera. And so I had to teach myself opera. I had to understand the stories. I had to understand what it takes to be an opera singer, down to, like, the shape of your
Oh,
mouth and how your
wow.
tongue lays in your mouth, things like that, in order to be able to talk to this woman in a way that didn't require a translation,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I'm not saying that I was an opera expert when I was interviewing her, but it took a lot for me to get up to speed so that I could talk to her. We wouldn't waste time talking about things that I should already
Mm-hmm.
know. So that's the way that it worked with Steve Harvey. That's the way that it took with Taraji, and that comes from my background as a journalist, to sit and become one with the subject and then write their story. With One Blood, it was all me,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, it is all me. It's all a figment of my imagination. It's based on, my sitting at my mother's knee and ear hustling in her and her girlfriend's conversations, trying to understand what it meant to be a woman in the 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s. And then really going back and understanding the kind of woman that I was in the 80s and
Mm-hmm.
90s and the early aughts. And the ways that I conducted myself and why I conducted myself in the way that I did, and how that led me to this moment. And so, Grace, the Book of Grace, the book is divvied up into
I love
three different,
that.
yeah,
Oh.
it's divided into three different characters: the Book of Grace, the Book of Dolores, and the Book of Ray.
Mm-hmm.
And Grace is representative of my mother of origin. And when I say my mother of origin, y'all, I'm adopted. And I found out when I was 12 that I was adopted. Snooping through my parents' papers, I found my adoption papers because, again, always been nosy. Um, and never said anything to my parents because I figured if they needed it to be a secret, I was going to honor that. Like, it didn't
Oh, so you
bother
didn't say
them.
anything.
I did not,
Okay.
because I didn't want to get in trouble for snooping through their things,
Mm-hmm.
first and
First,
foremost.
yeah, that part.
And right. And then second, it was just like, I never knew anybody else other than my
Mm-hmm.
parents, right? And so there was nothing that was going to change the fact that that was my mom and my
Yeah.
dad. And, and to this day, nothing has changed that, right? But I never told them that I knew until we buried my mother.
Mm.
And my dad told me that night that he had something to share with me. And I was like, I'm adopted, right? I've known since I was 12. And he was like,
Oh my
how did you know?
goodness.
And I told him, and that's when I was 34 when I told him that I knew. Yeah. So, the Book of Grace is honoring my birth mother, and the Book of Dolores obviously is honoring my
Mm-hmm.
mom. And then the Book of Ray is honoring the woman that I was in my 20s and 30s, and the things that I dealt with and fought through to get to today. Yeah, yeah.
I love the structure of the book. It
Thank
just
you.
it is so phenomenal because it's just the bloodline and everything just threaded together so beautifully. But I wanted to talk about the span because it's like 60 years.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep.
That's a huge feat. So talk a little bit about how you kept it all together because we have three different, like it's three books in one.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
those from the Great Migration to the Civil Unrest,
Yeah.
women's equality. I mean, you go all the way up
Yeah.
into I think
Yeah.
2000s.
Yeah. till the
Yeah.
2000s. Yeah. So, you know, it's so funny because, and you're going to think this is crazy, but when people started covering the book, they were like, you know, historical fiction. I was like, what's historical about this? I just wrote a story. What, why are they calling this historical fiction?
Yeah.
And then I was like, duh, you wrote it from like the 40s to the early aughts,
Yes.
of course. And the early aughts is considered historical. And I'm like, wait, that was last week. But no, it wasn't. It was 24 years ago.
Yes.
I'm like, dang, I'm getting old. Dang. But I didn't, when I wrote it, I wasn't considering it historical fiction, but I knew I really, really love, um, I really love like the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, like just sort of like the independence of Black folks.
Hmm.
When people think about Black folks in those eras, when you talk about it in pop culture, people tend to focus on sort of the racial terrorism
Hmm.
of that time, like how hard it was for Black people. But I grew up in a household with James and Betty Milner. And though they did, you know, in the South come up against racism, they always expressed to me that growing up in the South, they were their own, in the middle of segregation, they had their own independent
Yeah.
kind of way of living. They weren't thinking about white
Yeah.
folks. They were shopping at the stores that Black people created. They were communing with their community of Black folks. They were worshiping with their community of Black folks. They just didn't concern themselves with what white folks thought about who they were.
Hmm.
And to me, that is the ultimate power,
Yeah.
right? Like, I understand why integration happened. I understand what was meant to come from that. But I also understand that segregation wasn't the total devil that history and the way that we write about it makes it out to be.
Hmm.
Because I was raised by two people who thought differently about it.
And people were
And so,
thriving during that time as well
absolutely,
within their
absolutely,
own communities. Hmm.
absolutely,
Hmm.
absolutely. And so, a big part of Grace's story is based on stories that my dad told me about his grandmother
Hmm.
and all of the land that they owned, which my dad still lives on and my uncle still lives on. All of the businesses that they our family thrived on. You know, my dad's father had a wood cutting business, and my grandmother, or my dad's grandmother, so she was my great grandmother, was a midwife in the South and a healer. And she took care of the community. She was the one who caught all seven of my grandmother's babies, including my dad. And, you know, my dad tells me stories about how she would heal their bodies with like snot and spider webs and pieces of, you know, herbs and trees that had particular medicinal effects. And, you know, like that to me is
Hmm.
fascinating, right? Because that was a time when they couldn't just go to the doctor or they couldn't just go to the hospital. And so they had to be self-sufficient and learn how to do that on their own. And so Mama is sort of a compilation of stories that my father told me about his grandmother, my great grandmother, Ida Mae, and my grandmother, Abenda, and my dad and how he grew up. When I imagined the land that Grace and Mama lived on and
Hmm.
Batsy lived on, it was my father's, you know, yard. That's what I was envisioning when they're, you know, doing the farming and you know, growing the garden and going down to worship and the trees and in the waters. That is very much where my dad lives right now. And then when you know, we're talking about Dolores's, where she grew
Hmm.
up, that's South Carolina, which is where my mom is from. And when I'm talking about her living with her cousins, and my mother lived with her cousins, and you know, and she had a hard life, and she came through that. We lived in New Jersey for a minute, so I'm remembering, you know, things about the house that I grew up in, and what the neighborhood was like, and what it felt like to integrate a block and
Hmm.
feel like, you know, a fish out of water. And then moving back to Long Island to be with my mother's friends and to worship in the church that she loved, and all of that is very much sort of a recollection of what I remember through my childhood and teenage years. So going back and finding the history, like when we lived in Willingboro, I wanted to know, like, from my dad's perspective, like, how the hell did we end up, integrating that neighborhood?
Mhm. How'd y'all
How
find
did Black
yourselves?
people end up there?
Right.
And so, like, it was a lot of research going in, doing, like, okay, so what was the town of Willingboro like? Why were there not Black people? When did Black people come? And I found out all of this doing research, that Willingboro was, like, one of the first sort of suburban communities built, and they actually railed against keeping it segregated, and pulled away from Robert Moses and his like divine design to keep Black people away from the suburbs. And that's how Black people ended up there, and my parents happened to be one of those people who integrated that town. And so like, it's all of that came into play, and it's just interesting to me because,
It's
again,
fascinating.
I'm nosy.
Yeah, it's very fascinating.
And it just sort of provided that bed for me to be able to tell, what I hope folks thought to be an interesting
It's
story.
very fascinating. The time period that you cover is like, I truly felt like I was in the moment as you were going through. And so that's why people call it historical fiction, because you're such a good darn writer that you captured everything that was going on
Yeah.
throughout the entire time
Yeah.
period. I mean, every single thing. I mean, another part of it that you captured that I really enjoyed, but you talk the story of Grace and her
Yeah.
boyfriend, that her
Yeah.
baby's father,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
how during that time the pride of Black people, but also in our own community, how there was so much classism.
Right.
Um,
Right.
the socialites of that
Right.
time, right? And so, can you talk a little bit about that, because that was a pivotal point in the book as well.
Absolutely. So Grace ends up, for reasons that I won't say because I don't
No,
want to spoil it, ends
before
up
you start,
moving.
someone says nosy Libras make great writers. Are
Yes, we
you
do.
are you a Libra?
I
I'm a
am very
Libra.
much so. Hey,
Yes. Okay, go right ahead.
yes, yes, we are nosy
Yes,
as
we
hell.
are.
We know all the things
All of it.
and constantly weighing them all against one another. So yes, nosy
Okay,
Libras are
this must
amazing.
be a friend
Um,
of yours. Okay.
but I wait, where was I going?
We're talking about the classism
Oh,
within the
right,
Black community
right,
and the
right.
socialites.
So right, Grace ends up in Brooklyn,
Hmm.
and she ends up with an auntie who moved to Brooklyn years before, trying to escape sort of like the degradation that she faced in the South. She didn't see the jewel in living in the South. She wanted to get away from that and
Yeah.
move to the North. And when Grace goes there, she finds herself smack dab in the middle of Black respectability, Black socialites,
Hmm.
and people who, have money or have prestige, and she has to sort of navigate trying to hold on to who she is as a country girl
Yeah.
who, practiced a religion that was separate and distinct from sort of the integrationist kind of Black church respectability. And she has to figure out how to navigate that. She falls in love with a boy whose parents are from the South, but came up, during the Great Migration, migrated up north and used their money and prestige to kind of run their little corner of Brooklyn.
Right.
And he understands um, why it's his job or his mission to help with the civil rights, because all of this is happening during the civil rights movement.
Hmm.
He's in New York and he's fighting for the South, but doesn't necessarily understand who the people of the South are. He kind of looks at it in sort of like this lens of caricature instead of what it
Yeah.
actually is. And Grace is like, this is what it actually is. And you don't know because you weren't raised in the South. I don't know if you've even been to the South. You were born here. And you're trying to sort of put your ideas of what you read about the South into my reality. And let me tell you my reality. I appreciate being here in Brooklyn, but y'all are weird. You do weird things. And, you know, you act like your family, but you're not treating me like family. And I miss home. And home for me is not the caricature that you see and that you're fighting for. So what do you know of it? And so there's an actual conversation between the two, where she's actually expressing that and saying, like I thought I liked you, but the way that you talking right now makes me think that maybe you're not the one for me. And he has to, eventually make that up. They go through something very
Mm-hmm.
traumatic, and that sort of brings them together, and they go on to have a
Yeah.
baby together, and that's what leads to the other two books. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about the characters. We have Grace, who
Hmm.
has a baby, and her aunt's very, very mean to her.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Aunt
Yeah.
Hattie is very mean to her.
Yes.
And we're not
Yes.
giving anything away because we talk about that she takes the baby from her,
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
And then we have Lolo, and then we have Ray. So I want
Right.
you to expound a little bit because everyone, I heard you do an interview, and this was so profound to me because you're absolutely right. The audiobook,
Hmm.
I'm
Ah,
steering y'all
yes.
to this direction because this is how I first, I
Yeah.
written to the DMs and said, this audiobook sent me over the edge
Yes.
because
Yes. The audio is
it is
nuts.
absolutely, I'm telling you this, and everybody knows that comes in here. I talk about audiobooks all the time, but this one right here,
Yeah.
outstanding,
Yeah.
stellar. I
Yeah.
mean, the goat of narrators, Bonnie Turpin,
Yes.
Jonice Abbott Pratt, and then
Yes.
Tina Litford, Queen
Yes.
Sugar, is.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
I was like,
Yes.
what am I experiencing here? And then
And
you tell me I haven't listened to the audio book. And I was like, what?
I hadn't listened to it. But that because I'm the kind of person. There are two kinds of readers. There's those who listen to audiobooks and you can stay engaged, and my attention span is
Yeah.
like this. And so when I listen to audiobooks, I end up like floating off somewhere else because my mind is constantly thinking about 40 different things at the same time, and then I miss stuff, and then I have to rewind. And so I like to feel the book in my hand. If there's something that I've read and I didn't necessarily understand it, I could go back to it. I can mark it up and I can go back to it. And sometimes that doesn't translate for me in audio. But let me tell you, when I listen to One Blood in audio,
It,
oh my goodness.
that's the feeling. That's the
It was
feeling.
nuts.
It is an
So
experience.
it was nuts. Like Macmillan Audio wanted originally to do one voice, and I was like, no, it's three different characters. There needs to be three different voices because you're talking about a voice set in the
Mm-hmm.
South. You're talking about a voice that is Southern but set in the North, and then you're also talking about someone who was raised in the North and is living in, like the early aughts. And so, there's a big difference between a Southern voice
Mm-hmm.
in the 1940s and a Southern and now Northern voice, trying to fit in the middle of New Jersey, and then a voice that is set in Brooklyn in the 2000s. Like that, and I'm sure there are talented women out there who could pull that off, but I don't see why we need to. Let's find three different people who
Yeah.
can hit those voices. And so the one that was the most challenging was Grace's voice, because Grace's voice is straight up Southern and in rural Virginia in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. And a little bit of the 60s, and all of the voices, all of the auditions that I heard, everybody had like a fake Southern accent.
Mm.
I don't have a Southern accent, but I recognize a Southern accent because I was raised in a house with two Southerners who have Southern accents, who also have New York accents. So there are words that my dad says and the ways that he says them that sound very Southern, but he doesn't have a Southern twang.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I moved to Georgia, I understood and heard Southern voices and didn't find them. Some people, kind of disrespect them and treat them as if they're ignorant,
Mm-hmm.
or if they, like as if they can't be smart because they have a twang
Yeah.
to their voice. And I've never felt that way because my parents speak that
Yeah.
way. And so I found that the people that we were auditioning were pretending to have Southern voices, and it just sounded ignorant to me. It's like being Italian and trying to
Yeah.
speak Spanish with a Spanish accent. It just didn't work, right? And so I just happened to have a relationship with the publicist for Tina Lifford,
Mm-hmm.
and I had just finished watching the last episode of Queen Sugar and was all in my feelings about it because the way that the
Yeah.
the series ended
Yes.
involved like ancestors and sort of ancestor veneration and
Mm-hmm.
like being able to feel your ancestors and your ancestors being there and guiding you, which I absolutely believe in, which is why my mother is in this room
Mm-hmm.
right now. Um, I've been finding orange ladybugs all over the house. Here in my cousin's house, there's orange ladybugs all over the floor. They're not alive, but all up in the windows. And I was once told that when my mother is visiting me or making her presence known, she either sends orange ladybugs or white
Oh,
feathers.
okay.
And there's orange ladybugs all over. And me, my dad, and my brother are here. And we're never all three of us together. And so I feel like my
Yeah.
mother is here, just here. But anyway, that's how. So it was divine intervention that I happened to have a relationship with Tina Lifford's publicist. I was talking to her on the phone and she was having dinner with Tina Lifford. And I was like, you're with Tina Lifford? I'm still drying my eyes from watching the last of Queen Sugar. Can I just please talk to her and tell her how that series moved me, and particularly with that last
Mm-hmm.
episode, because it made me understand my family and my mother and her engagement with me from the other side. And I talked to her, and then like a couple of days later, she agreed to do the audio for the Book of Grace, and she is just pure
It's amazing.
perfection. She's perfection. When I heard it, I burst into tears. When I first heard the first words, the
Yes,
first
the
page, I
first
was like, "This
line
is
that she.
this is grace."
Yes.
Absolutely. And so that's how that came to be. And then Bonnie
Oh,
Turpin, was just the perfect Lolo, and Janice Abbott Pratt was just the perfect Ray. And she got that Brooklyn accent down and sort of that modern voice. And Bonnie is just,
you
like
could
the
have read
way
the
that she,
whole thing, but you definitely
yeah,
needed three
the
people.
way that she reads is just
It's
like she's acting it out. The way that she emotes just makes it feel like you are watching a
yeah,
play. You're listening
it's
to it. It's
my
amazing. So I'm so
favorite audio
proud
of the
of it.
last year. Like literally,
Thank
I
you.
it is so absolutely stunning. So if you guys are
Thank
audiobooks,
you.
and I actually have the book in my hand when I'm listening to audio,
Yeah.
so I like to.
Oh yeah.
But audio, it's probably one of the best I've ever listened to.
Thank you.
Literally, it is
Thank you.
absolutely
Thank
stunning.
you. It was just beautiful. And I wrote the book and I was listening to it like this, like, whoo,
Yeah,
whoo,
it, it takes you on a journey just listening to them because the question I was asking about having three different people is because they're distinct
yeah,
voices and they're distinct time periods and they
absolutely.
captured it magnificently.
Just
I mean, it's amazing.
yeah,
So my
yeah,
next question that I want to talk about something
yeah,
you have so many things you explore in the
yeah,
book, so we can't get to them all.
yeah, yeah.
But I want to talk about your exploration of Black motherhood
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
and what you wanted to convey through that exploration because
Yeah.
why we mother the
Yeah.
way that we do. I mean,
Yeah.
there's so
Yeah.
much. I think
Absolutely.
the one of the most touching parts for me was when Ray became a mom and
Mhm.
she realized the mother that she did not want to be.
Right.
Right?
Right.
When you have kids, like
Right.
you think about, okay, I'm not going to do this when I have kids. This is how I was raised, but I'm
Absolutely.
not going to do this because I was
Absolutely.
of we had a voice, but then it was kind of you still knew kids are supposed to
Right.
be seen, not heard,
Right.
that type of thing.
Right.
And I
Right.
knew that I wasn't going to I was going to make sure my kids always had a voice. You're still going to get in trouble if you did something wrong,
That's right.
but
Right. Right.
you
Right.
still
Right.
can
Right.
voice respectfully. You
Absolutely.
have the floor, right?
To give
And
them the
so,
agency. Yeah.
yeah, to give it to
Yeah.
them. Um, and so I want to talk a little bit about your exploration with Black motherhood
Sure.
in this book.
So, my big part of my background after I left writing politics and entertainment, I ended up being an editor at Parenting
Mm,
Magazine. And parenting opened up the door for me to be a mom expert. I, worked as an editor, um, uh, running the ages and stages department there, and that was about like all of the things that your babies do at certain ages, and like what you should expect as a mother. And at the time, I was a young mother. My babies were like Lila had just been born when I went there, and Mari was 3. And so they were little, and I was learning about the mechanics of children, right?
Mhm.
Not just sort of feeling my way through it. I was reading a lot about, okay, at 6 months, they're going to be sitting up. And, by 8 months, they recognize race. And here's the way that, they're going to evaluate that in the way that it's going to freak you out a little bit, but this is what, like you should expect. And then when I decided that I wanted to be a full-time author, we moved from New York to Georgia. They gave me a column called Ask Denene. And basically, I ended up being a mom expert, doing an advice column for them about motherhood and friendship and all the ways that we raise our children with intention. And so, and during that, I created mybrownbaby.com, which was a parenting site, the largest Black parenting site at the time. And, it was about discovering who we are as mothers at the intersection of parenting and race. And so I just became obsessed with being a good mom,
Mhm.
right? And helping other moms be good moms and understanding, like I said earlier, that we love our children with intention. You don't just come to us and talk to us about like the educational system and how it's failing Black kids, or talk about crime and how it's catching Black kids, or talk about all of the pathologies that people always saddle directly on Black children and their parents, right?
Mhm.
Oh, well, you want to talk about fatherless homes, go and talk to a Black mom. Or if you want to talk about, like the educational system being for crap, go talk to a Black mom. And I'm like, I want to talk to a Black mom about how we get our kids to use the
Yeah.
potty, or how we get our kids to, like eat vegetables, or how we, all of that. How do we do our daughter's hair
Mhm.
and make her love it? Like that's the kind of stuff that I want to talk about, right? And so that sort of opened the door to me being a mom expert. And so I'm always thinking about motherhood because I love being a mother. It's like I love my baby. My babies are 24 and 21. I adore them. I love being their mother. I've loved being a mother. And I also, was obsessed with why my mother mothered the way that she did. Um, and all the ways that I chose to mother differently, not just because I just didn't want to be the kind of mother that my mother was to me. And that's not saying that she was a bad
Right.
mother. That's saying that she was a mother with the tools that she had.
Yes.
And I ended up being the kind of mother that I am based off of what I saw her doing as a mother and also the tools that I had access to. And so I wanted to explore that in One Blood. I read this book once, that is so brilliant. Jason Reynolds is
He-
such a brilliant
yeah,
writer.
he's amazing.
And yeah, and he wrote this book called Ghost. And
Yes.
it opens with a little boy burning his mother's house down. And then you're like, oh my God, he burned his mother's house down, right?
Right.
What kind of bad but like kid burns his mother's house down? And then Jason ends up sort of putting his finger on all the things that this kid does that everybody else would see as bad, but then you understand why he ended up doing these things, and understanding that they weren't
Mhm.
intentional. Like some things happened because this happened, that happened, and it led him to this point where he made this not so great decision that may not have even been a purposeful
Right.
decision. It was an accident, and that's what led to this accident, which led to that accident, which is why this happened. So he's not a bad kid. There's all of these different ways. If you take the time to know who he is, you understand how he got to this point. And so I wanted to explore motherhood in that same way. How did Dolores end up being the kind of mother that she is? She's hard, right?
Hard.
She's
Yes.
protective. She's mean, right? She's loving, but not in the way that, like a lovey-dovey
Yeah.
loving. And I wanted to explore how she became that person. And so that required me to sort of snake my way back to, all those different ways that she was loved, not loved, abused,
Yep.
all of the background that led to her being the woman that she is, and the things that she learned and the tools that she had that she used to raise her own kids. And then what kind of person that daughter would be, and what she would remember about being raised at Dolores's hand, and then and raised at the hand of Tommy, her father,
Mm.
and what it was that how it is that she would want to be different. A part of it also, beyond the book Ghost, is my dad. My dad grew up in rural Virginia. He was the son of a mother who passed away when he was 10,
Mm.
and a father who made him drop out of school so that he could work in his business. He was a workhorse. His father was abusive,
Mm.
and he decided very quickly that he wanted to be a different kind
Yep.
of dad. So he knew who he did not want to be, and he ended up being the kind of father that he wished that he had.
Right.
Now, that wasn't necessarily the same for his brothers, right? Like, some of them picked up different characteristics from their father and what they remembered of their mother, and that sort of came out in the wash, right, in the way that they raised their kids. I'm the lucky one who got to be raised by a father who said, I wish that this is the way that my father would have been to me. And so I'm going to be that kind of father to my
Yeah.
children. And he used whatever tools that he could find. The biggest one is his big heart and his love for me and my brother. And, just turned out to be an incredible father. And so I wanted to explore that in the pages of One Blood. What is it that leads to, um, the kind of person that you ultimately end up being through the lens of motherhood, because I just love being a mom.
Yeah. That's so special. I'm
Yeah.
not even going to touch on the men because that's a whole nother IG live for the
Yeah.
men. And
Yeah.
I'm not even going to go.
Yes, yes,
I can't
yes.
because
Roman and
Roman and
Tommy,
Tommy,
and
I just
yeah,
can't
and
even
Mr.
talk about it.
Aaron
No,
and his
I'm
protectiveness,
not
and yeah.
giving them any airspace right now. Y'all read the book and then come back and tell me what you think.
Right, that's right.
Most of y'all
That's
have read the book. And
right.
so, I can't imagine. First of all, this was not an easy read. And I don't
Yeah.
think that you were trying to make it an easy read. First of all, I don't think
Yeah.
that at all because
Yeah.
it's so
Yeah.
real
Yeah.
that it just is what it is,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
with it being a harder read,
Mhm.
I would get that people will ask you, oh, what's the hardest part to write? But I'm going to ask you something
Okay.
different. Not what the hardest, but what character or what scene, what was the part that gave you joy in writing this book?
I, I really loved Grace.
Yeah.
Like, I really, really loved the relationship that she had with her
Mm-hmm.
grandmother. I really loved her grandmother and sort of her love and relationship with the land, with the environment, with understanding that God is everywhere and is in everything, and using that to cater and tend to her community. I loved that Grace felt every last bit of that through her grandmother,
Mm-hmm.
and that the only thing that she ever wanted was to be loved and to
Yeah.
love. Like, that is who Grace was. She was just love, right? And I named her Grace because um, I wanted to explore how a baby ends up not being with her birth
Mm.
mother, and to give grace to the birth mothers who have the children and either have their babies taken away or have the sense to give their babies away, so that their children can be raised with intention and love in a way that maybe they aren't able to. And so writing Grace was probably the easiest one. It hurt.
Uh-huh.
um, Things that happened to Grace hurt,
Mm.
but I truly feel like my both of my mothers, I found like, I don't know if the folks who are on who are here listening know, but during the course of writing the book, I found my birth
Mm.
mother. And I thought that I wouldn't be able to find her because the story that I had was that I was left on a stoop and somebody found me, a few days later. And my parents came along, found me a few days later, and started the adoption proceedings. That was what I was told, but that wasn't the truth.
Mm.
And so while I was, researching One Blood, I discovered that I did have access to figure out who my mother was, and I found her within, because journalists are nosy, I found her within like a couple of weeks of figuring out that my birth story wasn't necessarily true. And so
Wow.
I know her name. She actually was living in the same community that I moved to when I moved to Georgia. Somehow I firmly believe that our DNA, our blood, is always going to find one another, like water finds cracks and finds its way into, places that you do not want water to be. I feel like our souls are always going to be interconnected because that's whose blood runs through me.
Mhm.
And so she was actually in the same town, this little random town in Georgia that I lived in. That's where she passed away in 2017. Um, and I missed her. And so she's buried out there in that town. Um, she has a son. I don't know if he's her birth child by birth, or if he's adopted. I have no idea, but he is in Atlanta. I've not reached out to him, but this information came to me during the course of writing this book. Uh, it is not an easy read, um, and that is something that I kept hearing back and forth from people. Like, I heard that a lot from reviewers when we
Mhm.
would when my publicist would try and get it seen by the big book clubs that make books
Yeah.
into bestsellers, that it was too hard of a read for them and they didn't want to subject their audiences to that. They needed something lighter fare. And I respect that, but that wasn't what I was trying to do. I was trying to tell a very specific story, and if it hurt, it was going to hurt. If it was scary, it was going to be scary. If it was, disgusting, it was about to be disgusting, because
But
that's
isn't
life.
that the I was gonna say, isn't that the essence of life though?
It's life.
It's like it's life.
That's life. That's
Yeah.
life. And again, I was trying to sort of dig into why my mother was the kind of mother she was, why I was the kind of mother
Mhm.
I was, why, what my birth mother may have gone through in bringing me into this world. And it wasn't always pretty. And so that's what One Blood is. It is the truth. And that's all that I could,
It's
fathom or
it's
muster.
amazing. I know I got to let you go, but I got two things I got to ask you. We
Yes.
got to talk about this cover. We have to talk about the cover.
Oh, Oh yes. So they asked me for my wish list of artists that I would want to create the cover. And at the top of that list was Tawny Chapman. Her name is Tawny. Last name is Chapman. Chatmon.
Okay.
She's on Instagram. I stalk her regularly. And she did this series of what she does is she takes photographs and then she like embellishes them in different ways. And she had this series that was about hair and like sort of how our ancestors are in the DNA of our hair. And so I put that at the top of the list. And she said, thank goodness. She said, yes, we could use a piece from that
Oh my
series.
goodness.
And that's what's here. And so the original, which you held up
Hmm.
earlier, is the actual original picture. And then she asked me what I envisioned, how I envisioned what Grace, Dolores, and Ray looked like. And so I sent her pictures of my mother. I sent her pictures of my birth mother, which I actually found, and I sent her pictures of me, and then some actresses that I thought would be great to play those three characters. And then she created new faces for the hair. Yes. And then we changed the colors a little bit to make it kind of pop out onto the, but it's Tawny Chapman, who is brilliant.
It's
My
amazing.
agent actually bought me the original, so I have the original
Oh,
piece of art at home. And, you know, I'm a huge collector of art. I stalk artists on Instagram all the time. I don't spend my money on expensive shoes and purses. I
the
spend
art.
my money on art.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
beautiful. It's so stunning. It's such a great cover.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
is there any, what's next? Can you tell us what's next?
Oh
Is this
goodness.
story
So
over? Is this over? Are we gonna
it kind of is.
oh
I know folks are like, what happened to
I know,
Grace?
like
Like she just like Hattie, you know, like does what she does, and then we never see
we
Grace again.
never see
And
Grace again.
right, you
Where
never
is
see
Grace?
Grace again.
Does Grace get
Cause,
to meet Ray? I mean, we don't know anything about Grace, but okay, I'll take it.
but you know, I did that on purpose
I know.
because you know what? I am an adoptee who never got to meet her mom.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until a year ago that I actually even knew who she was, and I'm
Mhm.
55. So what I wanted the reader to feel was what we adoptees feel,
Yeah.
that we do not have closure.
Hmm.
We do not get to know what happened to our mothers. We do not get to know what their, most of us do not get to know what their history and their story is. And so I wanted the reader to feel that. She gets pushed out that door and we never see her again.
Yeah.
And her baby doesn't know who she is, barely knows that she's even adopted. And, you know, when she does, she has no information about her other than what little piece that, you know, like her mother saved for her. And so I don't know if we're going to revisit. What we're going to do is, what I'm going to do is continue the exploration
Oh,
of motherhood.
okay.
There's a book that, there's two books that I'm working on. One that's called What They Created Was Love. And it is from a birth mother's perspective and following the actual birth
Hmm.
mother and sort of what happens to her and her family when her baby's taken away.
Oh,
And she's going to be giving birth in one of those homes for unwed mothers, which is
well,
where I
Grace,
was born. Yeah,
where Grace?
where
Oh,
Grace's
okay.
baby was taken. I was actually born in one of those
Oh,
homes. One of the Salvation. I'm a Booth baby, and Salvation Army had a series of homes for unwed mothers called Booth Memorial Hospital, and they had them all across the nation and internationally. And basically, what they would do was have unwed mothers come there to give birth, and then 85% of those children would be adopted away, whether the mother approved of it or not. They would
wow.
basically coerce her into
Mhm.
giving her baby up. So 85% of the babies were born there. And that's how I found my birth mother, by realizing that the name of the hospital that was on my birth certificate wasn't actually a hospital, it was a home for unwed mothers. And once I had that information, I was able to do the research to get to who my birth mother was. So what they created was love, is that. And then the other book is called One Drop, and it's what happens when a woman who is white, a white socialite, has a black baby unexpectedly. A white lady married to a white man has a black baby, and what happens? Yeah.
Okay.
So those are
I'll
the two
expect
that
early
I'm
copies of both of those. I know
working on.
that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'm not sure which one of those two is going to be first, but those are the two that I'm working on now.
They both sound amazing.
Thank
Now
you.
you know you have a high bar up there for the audio
I
book.
know and I'm writing scared too. I am writing scared. Listen, I am writing scared. Like when, One Blood took so much
I
out of
bet.
me. It took so much to write. And, like there were moments where I have a friend, Celie. I thought I saw her on here. Celie Riccio is the one who introduced me to myself.
Mm-hmm.
She's the one who made me understand that just because my mother passed away, that did not mean the end of our relationship together.
Yeah.
And that there are ways that that I could communicate with her that and the ways that she communicates with me, and if I just open my eyes, that I could talk to her, I could feel her, I could communicate with her, I could get what I needed from her, and she would be more than willing to give it. And so there were times when I was writing One Blood where I would be in the computer and I would pull away a couple of hours later and not even realize where those words came
Mm.
from. And you cannot tell me that Betty Milner and my birth mother, whose name I'm not going to say out loud
Mhm.
because, because I've not told anyone who
Yeah.
she is, and it would be unfair for me to say it out loud without reaching out to her family, my family.
Right.
Um, but I am convinced that the two of them were present and helping me tell this story because it's ultimately their story.
Yeah.
And so, it's a very spiritual journey. And I feel like that's what these next books are going to be.
This has been such an amazing conversation. It's so touching, and I'm so thankful that you said yes, and that you in the midst of celebrating your aunt's life, that you still came and talked to us. I have a story I'm going to share with you. I know we're out of time, but I'm going to reach out to you later and share with you in regards to the adoption story with one of my close friends and how he found his birth mother.
There it is.
Um, and so it, I always would ask him, and he's older, and he's like, I just felt like I needed to. It was a thing that I
Yeah.
was chasing with no
Yeah.
answer. So,
Yep. Yep. It is, I again, like my parents are my parents. I
hmm
love them to death. But as adoptees, we have the right to understand our origin
yeah.
story. We have the right, just like everybody else, like my birth certificate till I figured out I could actually get my full birth certificate was a abbreviated birth certificate with my parents' name on it, a random, just my birthday and the hospital that I was born in. That was it. That's all the information I had about
Yeah.
myself. And that's crazy to be 55 and not
Yeah.
know your origin
Yeah.
story. It's unfair. And so, like I understand, your friend's pull to, chase
hmm
down who he is.
But he was with
And
his dad, but not with his mom.
oh
And
wow.
the lady, he thought
Wow.
the lady was his mom, but she was not his mom. But he was
Oh
with his
wow.
dad. hmm
Wow. Wow. Yeah. That it's again, we all
hmm
just know our
Yes.
origin story and the truth.
Yeah. And
And to not
that
be
part,
and
the
not
truth
be and not be like the side character in this.
in your own story.
Kerry Washington, when she wrote Thicker Than Water, said in an interview that she felt like the supporting character in her own
hmm
story because of her parents decision to keep the true origins of her birth a secret. And I could identify deeply with that, and that's without feeling any kind of malice toward my parents. I
Right.
understand the time that they made those decisions. I was scared to death to tell my father that I found my birth mother, but it took me a year to
Mm.
tell him. But when I finally told him, he was the happiest person on the planet. Like, oh my goodness, I'm so happy you found her. Where is she from? What's her name? What does she have family? Did you reach out to her family? He was so excited for me. But it turns out, and he told me this at the time, he was warned by a judge when they were finalizing my adoption that they were not allowed to tell me anything about the circumstances of my adoption or my family, or there would be legal repercussions. That's the way that
Mm.
they dealt with adoption back in those days, because a part of it was a system, and a part of it was them taking people's children
Yes.
away from them and giving them away. And so we need you to button up. We're going to seal all these records because we're not supposed to be doing this to begin with, right? And so, they threatened my parents into silence. And, being Black folks in America, you ain't got to say nothing to me twice about not going to jail behind
Right.
something. So I'm going to keep my mouth shut, right? And so that's why they told me this crazy concocted story that wasn't necessarily, the truth. And when I revealed that I found the truth, he was happy for me, and felt like he had been unburdened
Yeah.
because for all that time he wasn't allowed to say it out loud. And so, I understand the pull, and every last one of us has the right to know the truth.
hmm
And so when Grace gets dropped off at the end of the Book of Grace, y'all feel what it feels like
Yeah.
for the rest of us who are going through
Yeah.
this. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I can't wait to see what's next. I will definitely be in touch. We are linked now.
Yes.
And
Yes,
everyone, please
please.
make sure if you haven't read it, I put a link down in the chat. One Blood by Denene Millner. It's an awesome book. Get the audio if you love audiobooks.
Yes.
So thank you again and take care.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of
It was
course.
absolutely my honor and pleasure to be here. I'm so grateful to you for your support. Everybody who is hearing this or will hear it afterwards, thank you so much for the support. We authors cannot exist without you, the reader. We cannot exist without voices like yours because as Black authors, we don't get coverage in newspapers, magazines, we don't get reviewed. And so it's people like you, spaces like yours that lift us and encourage us to keep going. So I thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank
I
you.
thank you so much
All
for
right.
this.
Take care.
All
Thank you. I
right.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.